All right, welcome to the podcast, Canine Conversations. I'm your host, Robert Cabral. I hope you enjoyed your Christmas and your Hanukkah season, and it's time to get started with another podcast. I was kind of floored last couple of days, some of the comments I got on the Christmas podcast, and it was really interesting to see. Well, first of all, we should start the podcast, so let's start that out with a little bit of this. Because that's how we always start the podcast out. We don't want to lose track of that. But, I said, hey, I'm really fastidious about saying Merry Christmas to people and honoring people's faith. And then some people kind of got upset and thought, well, I'm discouraging people from having, if people are Jewish and they have a belief. But by the way, on Saturday when it was Hanukkah, I wished everybody a happy Hanukkah. And then other people said, well, I'm an atheist and, you're denying. I'm not denying shit. Right? I'm not denying anything. I think if you're a Christian, you believe in Jesus Christ, I think that's fantastic. I think if you're a Jew and you have a strong rooted faith in Judaism, I think that's fantastic. I think if you're Muslim and you have a strong rooted faith in that, I think that's fantastic. I think the only time when we run into problems is when people try to step on other people's beliefs. And that's something that was the whole point of what I was saying, is I'm not stepping on people's faith. And for those of you, there's a couple of you, who tend to believe that, you're a lower human being or you're not intelligent if you believe in God, well, then I think you're a total fucking moron. Like to actually say that to somebody because it hasn't been proven. They say, well, God hasn't been proven. Well, by the way, the Big Bang hasn't been proven either. And there was an old saying, there was a scientist, what was his name? Rupert Sheldrake. He said, if you give us one miracle, we'll give you all the rest. And the miracle to that was explain the Big Bang, right? Explain where these two particles found each other. So I'm not here to preach religion or politics or anything. I don't care what you believe. I don't care who you vote for. If you're a good human being, you're a good person. I've got friends who are Democrats. I've got friends who are Republicans. I've got friends who are Christians, Jews, Muslims. I've got black friends, gay friends, white friends, Asian friends. I mean, it doesn't matter. None of that shit matters to me. What really annoys me more than anything is that people actually think, or people actually make judgments based on that, which is so insane. It's so myopic that people, bring these one-sided beliefs in. And that kind of leads me into the dog training thing, because people believe, you have to train dogs one way or another. You have to be positive only. You have to be correction only. You have to be this. You have to be that. And it's all bull. And that's really what I'm here to dispel, is that, you can embrace different ways of training. I've got, friends who are trainers who are positive only trainers. They will only use cookies. And, if they're successful with their training, I think that's great. I've got no problem with that. The problem comes in when you try to convince me of your way. So if you're, let's say hypothetically you're a Muslim and you have to convince me to be a Muslim, that's wrong. I'm not going to fall for that. That's complete bullshit. If you're Christian and you believe like you have to convert everybody else, I think that's bullshit, right? You can have your belief, you can have your faith, you can have your whatever you want. You can have your cake, but you don't have to make me eat it. That's the bottom line. So anyway, that was my little take on the situation from Christmas, because I said Merry Christmas to everybody, and again on Hanukkah, I wish everybody happy Hanukkah, and on and I know that the end of Ramadan, the Muslims have a holiday called Eid, and I'm going to find out when that holiday falls, and I'm going to wish everybody a happy Eid if you're Muslim. And if you're not, then who cares? Like if you're not celebrating Christmas and I wish you Merry Christmas, is your hands going to fall off? I don't think so. All right. Anyway, I have these headphones on. It's actually easier if I have the headphones on, because I can actually hear myself talking, and I know I've got a good audio level. So I'm going to take them off in a minute, but I need to check things back and forth, because this is a podcast that I am broadcasting. I'm putting on video as well, so you guys have more of me. You can see my handsome face here, and I hope you enjoy that. I hope that's not too much for you guys to see. Anyway, today's podcast, I want to talk about how to rescue a dog, because that's such a common thing that people go through, that everybody wants to rescue a dog. Because, politically right now, if you buy a dog from a breeder, you're a really crappy human being. But I'm here to tell you, you're not. Got something to drink here. I got to get a drink. That's probably means it's true. My mom used to say, das ist wahr ist. And in German, that means that is true. And generally, if you say something and then something happens, like a plate falls or you sneeze or something like that, and you say in German, "Das ist wahr ist," and that means that proves that it's true. So, if you want to rescue a dog, I think it's fantastic. I've worked in animal shelters for 12 plus years, helping dogs get rescued, helping people to better understand behaviors, and making life the world a better place for these shelter dogs. And you know what? Did I do it because it's such a noble thing? No, I did it because I really love dogs, and I've helped save a lot of dogs. I've helped rescue a lot of dogs. I helped get a lot of dogs into better situations. I've advocated for some dogs being put down because I think they were really not good candidates for adoption. But I never shamed anybody for not getting a dog from a shelter, right? Because you have to do what you want to do. You have to be a good person. You have to follow your own will. There's nobody telling you have to rescue a dog from a shelter if you don't really want to. If you want to do it a different way, you think you want to buy a dog from a breeder, just get a dog from a responsible breeder. Don't go to one of these morons on Craigslist or the internet, these website breeders, because it's bad. But today I want to talk about how to rescue a dog. And if you're not going to rescue a dog, if you're going to get a dog from a breeder, don't worry. I'm not going to fault you. But I'm going to tell you right now, do not, whatever you do, don't get a dog off Craigslist. Don't get a dog off some website, because you're going to be sorry and you're going to have a problem with the dog. So, and in the meantime, while I'm talking here, every once in a while I'm going to do this, which means I'm looking over at my podcast hardware to know how long the podcast is. Because we try to keep these podcasts at about a half an hour, and I think we've been pretty successful in doing that. I could actually look at my Apple Watch and do the same thing, but I didn't think of that. So, the first thing I think you want to ask yourself when you're saying you're going to rescue a dog is, one, the most important thing is, are you ready for a dog? Do you know what it's going to take to have this dog, to live with this dog, to take care of this dog, and the expenses and the commitment that's involved in having a dog? And if you're not, don't do it, right? Do some research first. Understand what you need to have to get a dog. When I first got Silly, my Shar Pei, who I had years and years ago, I asked my friend who had a dog, I said, hey, what's involved in this? Like, what if I want to go out on a date and I don't want to come home and I want to spend the night at a girl's house? I mean, now I'm basically a married man. I don't have this problem anymore, thank God. But it was a concern. Like, what if I want to go away for a night or two or something like that? What do I do with my dog? That's a huge, huge concern. You're suddenly completely tied down to having a dog in your life. It's like having a child, which will never grow up. And so he said, well, you can leave some food out for the dog. You could, if you've got a doggy door, you can let the dog go in and out and all this stuff. And I thought, well, I could probably do that. And of course, as soon as I got the dog, I fell in love, and that was the most important thing in my life. And I never spent the night out or anything like that ever again. And I haven't since, without having my dogs with me. So the question is, it's going to take a lot of time commitment, work commitment. You need to train the dog, walk the dog, exercise the dog, take care of the dog. You need to get the dog to the veterinarian. You need to have food for the dog. You need to feed the dog 2 or 3 times a day, and all these things. And that's something that you want to, are you a selfish person, like, where you can't do that for an animal? And if you are, then don't get the dog, right? That's really, really important. So, and that's something that some people don't understand, is that you really have to have this, this commitment to the dog, that you're able to care for the dog no matter what. It's the most important thing. Okay, so I took a break because I was trying to see how the video, which I got to watch myself, because this is a one-man show here. This is me doing all this service for you because I don't have anybody here. I need somebody behind the camera. I need somebody behind the microphone. I need all this stuff, but I don't have it. It's just me. So I hope you enjoy it. Hope you appreciate all this work. After you figure out you want a dog, then you want to find out, is a rescue dog right for you? Are you, and by the way, rescue dogs are more right for more people than purebred dogs a lot of times, because rescue dogs a lot of times already have been proof. They've been housebroken. They've had some training, some socialization, and all that stuff. So it's not as bad for you to have this rescue dog, but it's going to be. Hang on one more second. All right, so I had to edit a couple of times because here I try to use natural light, but the sun keeps changing because we're in the middle of a rainstorm here in California and Los Angeles, and so I just had to keep adjusting. Anyway, I hope this works out now. So back to the topic of I don't know why I have to explain this to you. I should just cut it and let you see it. So anyway, in asking yourself, first of all, are you ready for a dog? That's the first thing you ask yourself. The second thing is, breeder rescue. And those are real two honest answers you have to ask yourself. Don't let somebody guilt you into, oh, you should never get a breeder dog. They're the worst dogs. Only rescue dogs or this or that. And then on the other side, don't let somebody say, only breeder dogs are great. You've got to make this decision. It's an intelligent decision that you can make yourself based on information you can get. So if, for example, if you're going to do a sport with your dog, if you're going to do agility, if you're going to do obedience, if you're going to do protection work or anything like that, you're going to want a dog with a certain amount of drive, a certain amount of personality, and that is going to be hard to find, in a random shelter dog. You will find it, but what I'm saying is it's a little bit more work than knowing what you're going to get. So, for example, you want to do obedience, and you're going to look for a dog who's going to be probably like a border collie or something like that, and that dog should have a stable temperament, a good history. So you don't want to, get a dog. You're in it 2 years, and then the dog comes down with some kind of disease. So you want to get a dog that's been health checked. None of that is guaranteed, by the way. So nobody's going to say, oh, guaranteed this dog is going to be great, but you'll have a better chance at it if you kind of start out with, a stacked deck in your favor. In other words, the dog's parents and grandparents and siblings and offsprings and cousins and everything like that, or we're all obedience dogs. So it makes it easier for you to end up with a dog that will do well in obedience. But if you're just going to get a pet and a dog, like Janet got, after we had Cleo, she had Cleo years ago, then she got Bosman, and Bosman came from a shelter. He was a little, mini dachshund, still alive, thank God, today, 17 years old. And what was great about Bos was he was super high drive. It was also a big pain in the neck for her in the beginning because she was trying to figure out what, best she could do with him. So he was so disobedient that she took, not disobedient, like really a bad dog, but so much high drives, high energy, she took him to a trainer. And this trainer, Julie, said, this dog needs a job to do, and put him into agility. And Janet started doing agility with this dog and put amazing titles on the dog, did a great job with him. But the next dog she got from the Seeing Eye Foundation. So that dog was kind of, again, a stacked deck, a really solid temperament, a really nice dog, but was definitely not cut out for agility, right? So that dog was a little harder, and Jimmy, but again, Janet's a great trainer, really dedicated and everything, and put Masters agility titles on that dog, on Jimmy. But when she now wanted to get another dog, she said, okay, this time I'm going to stack the deck in my favor, and wanted a dog for agility, and went out and we bought Dwayne from a breeder, a really solid, reputable breeder in Florida. And the good thing is, what you're going to get, right? But when you're just going to get a dog, you want a pet, you want to go for a walk, you want to go for a hike, you want to have a dog hanging around the house, you don't want one of these high drive dogs. And a lot of times now, a rescue dog is going to be a super, super solid option for you. And when you go to get that dog, ask yourself what you want. What kind of breed do you want? What kind of drive you want? What age do you want? Like, for example, if you're just going to chill out at home, there is nothing better than a senior dog, right? Senior dogs are the best. There's nothing I love more than the frosted muzzle of a senior dog. They're just fantastic. They chill out at home. They mellow out. They're easy. They don't go running around barking, acting like complete nuts. Bosman's 17 years old. He's awesome. Goofy is 9. Maya's 9. And Jimmy's 9. They're just the best dogs at that age. So, I hate puppies. I think puppies are a huge pain in the ass. There's nothing redeeming about puppies to me. I know that sounds funny, but I just think puppies are such a pain in the neck. The only redeeming quality about a puppy is that they grow up to be dogs. And that's why the only reason I would ever get a puppy is because I know it's going to turn into a really good dog. But dogs are so great. The older they get, the better they get, the more fun they are, the better they are to have around. So, think about what age you want. You want a really chill, mellow dog? Get like a 5-6-year-old dog. That's a super great age to get. Low drive. If you're going to want, if you're going to go hiking, get a younger dog, get a 2 or 3-year-old dog, get a dog that's been through, that maybe it had a home, it lost its home, people moved, somebody died, whatever happened. Who cares? Breed, you're not going to get a purebred dog in a shelter. You're going to get a purebred dog in a shelter, but you're not going to get this, what, people claim, 35% of the dogs in the shelters are purebreds. That's bullshit, right? That, just don't even go to the shelter with that anticipation. And if you don't need a purebred dog, who cares? Like, who cares what breed the dog is? If it's a mutt, it's a mutt. It's going to be a great dog for you. You're going to have a great time with it. But think about that. And like I said, really draw the conclusion. Either it's going to be a shelter dog, it's going to be a rescue dog, or it's going to be a breeder dog. One or the other. You're not going to be able to, weigh those options and get half of each. So now, let's look at something that's really important. Don't be guilted into it. The first best way to how to rescue a dog is don't be guilted into it. Don't let somebody make you feel bad about doing it or not doing it, about that you have to get a rescue dog, you have to do this, you don't have to do shit. You have to live, you have to die and pay taxes, and that's about it. When it gets down to getting a dog, ask yourself a couple questions. In other words, let's say you go to the rescue, you go the rescue route, and that's really what this podcast is about, how to rescue a dog. But you're also rescuing a dog when you buy a dog. You're kind of not rescuing it per se, but you're bringing it into your home. You need to do the right things. But with the rescue, which is what I really want to address here, is find out a little bit about the rescue. Find out where they are, how long they've been in business, what kind of dogs they rescue, what their history is, and placing these dogs. Do they stand behind the dogs? Do they, a lot of times if you get a dog from a rescue early on and something, God forbid, goes wrong with the dog medically, they'll kind of help you get their rescue rate at their veterinarian. They'll kind of, give you a lot of information. Rescues have a lot of information. I remember when I first started Bound Angels, my nonprofit, which is not a real animal rescue, it's more of an educational organization, but we did a lot of rescue stuff. There was a woman in Canada, Kathy, who since passed away, and Dawn, who still runs the Merlin's Hope Rescue. These women were so informed and had so much information for me about Shar-Pei, because I was helping, I had two Shar-Pei, and I was rescuing Shar-Pei at that time. And there was so much information about health issues, about behavioral issues, about all these different things that really made rescuing the dog a super easy thing to do. And if you go with a good reputable rescue, like sometimes a breed specific rescue is a really good way to go, because they'll know a lot. The lab rescue will know a lot about the lab training, about the behaviors of labs, the health issues of labs, and it makes it really a good, solid foundation for you as a resource that you can go back to. And you want to find out from that rescue, what do they know about that dog, the dog that you're getting? Now, a lot of times they'll have pulled it from a shelter and they won't know that much, but other times they might. They might know where the dog came from, who the dog's owner was, and then these rescues, oftentimes actually good rescues, will put the dogs in foster. And in foster, it means they're living in a home, they're living with another dog or with a family or with people, and well, always with people, obviously, but they know about the dog, they know about the dog's history, and the information based on that, on this short history, whether it's been in foster for a week or a year, gives you a little bit of a heads up of what you're going to be dealing with this dog. And you really want to know that. You really, really want that information. And that's something you're not going to get from a breeder, right? So if you get a puppy from a breeder, you kind of know about the history of the parents of the dog and maybe the socialization of that dog, but you don't know how it's going to develop into the dog it's going to become. If you get a dog from a rescue, on this side now, you'll kind of know what these people have been living with for a week, a month, a year, or whatever it is. That information is super valuable to you based on you're going to be living with this dog. So that's something I really, really want to know about the dog. How is he with cats? How is he with other animals? How is he with children? How is the dog's prey drive? Because, is the dog crazy every time he sees a bicycle? Does he want to go chase the bicycle? Or when he sees squirrels in the park, is he, trying to fly up the tree to get the squirrels? Those are going to be things that are going to make your life with this dog a lot easier and a lot more understanding. So at least if you know the dog has those issues, you're going to know how to deal with them. So another thing too is a lot of really good rescues will, just like a really good breeder, will always take the dog back. So if you have an issue with the dog, then you can send the dog back later. Adjusting my headphones here. You can send the dog back later. Not that you're going to want to do that, but it's a good thing to know. In other words, a really good rescue will say, no matter what happens, if you ever need to get rid of this dog, we'll take the dog back. And that's imperative, right? That's super, super important, because a good rescue doesn't want their dog to end up in a shelter ever again. And they certainly don't want you to rehome the dog to somebody that they don't know or they don't approve of. So if they have a long application, they ask a lot of questions, that's a good thing. Now, if they're completely insane and nuts and they won't give you the dog because you live on a street and you have a door that might open to the street, they're insane, and then you're not going to want to deal with them. But I always like to know if the rescue will take the dog back, because it gives me, one, it shows me that the rescue really cares about the dog. Two, it shows me that they are a reputable organization. Find out how long they've been around, because if they just started a month or two ago, they might be the greatest organization in the world, but they might not be around, in a while. Now, that being said, you could have a 10-year organization that could be gone in a week as well. But think about, the history and past track records, get referrals, ask people if if they know somebody who rescued through the organization. As much as I've worked with shelters so much, I always think getting a dog through a rescue, if it's a good rescue, is a good option. And I'll tell you why. If you get the dog from the rescue, you know a little bit about the dog. The dog's been in foster, the dog's been, cared for and checked up and all that stuff. In a shelter, they don't know. I'm just telling you, they don't know. If it's an SPCA or Humane Society, a local SPCA or local Humane Society, they will have more information on the dog. They probably will have trained the dog, will have put some work into the dog, and will know a lot about it. But I'm saying in municipal shelter, it's really tough. I love rescuing dogs from municipal shelters. I think it's a great idea. Janet did it. I did it with my dog, Boots. But you don't know nothing. You don't know anything about the dog. That's tough. And not knowing anything about the dog makes it really hard to rescue the dog. So, oops, Goofy, no. All dogs are going to come with vaccines, right? And they're going to be neutered, which spayed or neutered. And that's really important because rescues don't want you taking some dog out there and breeding it, which is really a great idea because the reason the dog is in the rescue because somebody didn't want it. And then, if they take that dog and don't neuter it and put it out in the public, and then that dog, it gets around with somebody irresponsible, which most people are irresponsible with their dogs, sadly to say, maybe not you guys listening, but, it's going to be really important for you to have that dog neutered. And we'll talk about that in another podcast. But, I've had neutered dogs. I've had intact dogs. It's not that big of a deal. If you love the dog, you're going to rescue the dog. You're not going to breed this dog. You're not going to show this dog. Having it neutered is not going to be the end of the world. But what you want to check is, has the dog had a health check from a veterinarian? Has it been gone over? Now, some organizations, like some of the German Shepherd rescues or some of the lab organizations, will go, all the way through, and they'll do hip checks on the dog and elbow checks and, eye checks and all that stuff on certain breeds that have issues with it. But and if they do, they're going to require more of a donation for an adoption. And if they don't, they're going to require less. But it's really good to have that information. I want as much information on the dog as I can get, because I don't want to have my heart broken later when the dog, gets sick or dies or anything like that. And that being said, some, people love to rescue dogs that need health checks need health checks, that need medical care. And, I give those people a ton of credit because it's really hard to do. I mean, those dogs really just languish in shelters. Nobody's going to take a dog that's, that's sick. They'll take a dog with one eye or 3 legs. But, if the dog is sick or has cancer or something like that, it's a huge expense. And there are saints. There are other people out there who will take a dog who's got cancer and let it live the last couple of weeks, months, or whatever with them and give it a dignified ending, which, man, if you do that, you're my hero. I think it's just amazing, amazing, amazing. And one other question I like to ask the rescue, if I can find out, or the shelter, is, where did the dog come from? Did it belong to, a single person, a married couple with kids? Did it belong to an older couple? What was the activity level of the dog? In other words, what can I expect to have to give this dog to give the dog a really happy life? And then when I get that dog, I'm going to give that dog what the dog needs, right? I'm going to try to work that dog into my life as best as possible by starting out with what the dog needs and then shaping him into the dog that I want later to have. And I want to really bring up a topic which is important, and that is, what's the difference between rescuing a dog from a shelter or a rescue? And I kind of touched on it a little earlier on the podcast, and that is, a shelter doesn't have any information on the dog. They get the dog, they pick the dog up as a stray, or the dog the dog was dropped off. And because they're so overburdened with dogs and work and cats and animal municipal services, they don't have all the information that you're going to want to have about the dog. The rescue, even if they got it from the shelter, which obviously many of them do, they'll have gathered more information because the dog will have been in a foster care. And the foster care opens their information up, their wealth of information up, because they're going to see the dog, how the dog is with other dogs, especially in the foster situation, how the dog has been, on walks, on social play dates, on outings, on interactions with other people. And that's something that fosters will kind of take note of, because they want the dog to get adopted, and the easiest way to get a dog adopted is to have the most information on the dog. And some fosters, and some rescues will even start to train the dog, which is so important. And because a lot of times rescues are so radical about being kind to animals, they don't think that the dog should be trained. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too as well. But that gives you, and again, a humane society or an SPCA, a local SPCA, a small one in your town, might have a dog, and they might have training at the shelter. They might be doing already, some behavioral work on the dog, some socialization, some health work with the dog, getting a dog on a diet or exercise plan or anything like that. That's all stuff that you want to really think about when you ask those questions at the SPCA. Really ask questions, because those questions will give you a lot of information. But you're not going to get that at a municipal shelter. If you go any of the LA city shelters or, the LA county shelters or, or wherever you are, anywhere, you're obviously everywhere in the world. I'm sitting here in LA talking like everybody's in LA, but those shelters don't have that information. They just don't. They either maybe wrote a couple of things down. You might get an employee who doesn't know. You may get an employee who does know. You may get a volunteer like Pete from who works with me at Bound Angels, who just learns everything about the dogs and can give you that information. But don't expect it, right? At a shelter, at a municipal shelter, it's a crapshoot. You might get the most amazing, perfect dog out of that shelter, or you might get a dog that's kind of a basket case. It's going to just depend, and it's not the end of the world. You gotta roll the dice sometimes to get something fantastic, and you'll never win the lottery if you don't roll the dice and play that lottery ticket. So sometimes rescuing a dog is like that. And if you're just looking for a pet, there's not that many issues. I do look for aggression. If you're going to have a dog, I would not recommend most people to rescue a dog with aggression. That being said, there's some great organizations. I know, some friends of mine, like Melanie, and she would rescue these dogs and then put them into a training program, and then they would be fantastic, and then she would adopt them out. My friend Steph Cooper did the same thing, and those were great people who did that work. And I think if you can find that, that's fantastic. Don't just get some willy-nilly trainer. Get somebody who deals with with these behaviors and can really turn a dog around. And there are those people. I think you just got to research it and find it. Look on my Facebook page. I think you'll see a lot of that as well. And the question you want to ask yourself is, what makes a good rescue? What makes a good SPCA or Humane Society as opposed to a municipal shelter? And that is the people that put the work into making the dog better. When the dog comes in, the dog is obviously a basket case. The dog is, just losing its home. It's losing its person it loves, or the family it loves. It's losing the structure it had, the attention it had. Right now, Goofy's right here, right underneath, in my lap, being petted because he just cannot leave me alone. And, they're not going to get that when they get in the shelter. So the minute somebody hands the leash of a dog over in a shelter, that's when that dog stops being a pet and just goes back to being, a dog, a feral dog. They're ceased to become pets. And I talk about that in the Bound Angels PSA and an instructional video as well. And the dog, loses that connection to people. And it's super, super, super sad. But it's just what happens. That's just what happens to them. And they need to gather that respect and that love and that, most importantly, that trust again. And they can learn it again. But you've got to put that in them, right? And good rescues, good shelters, not really shelters, but good rescues will start to give the dog that hope again. They'll start to give the dog the ability to trust again, to train again, to bond with a person again. And fostering, I think, is a huge way to do it. A solid foster is a godsend. Somebody who can foster a dog from a shelter, I should say, or from a rescue, and turn this dog around is doing God's work. It's just so awesome, and it's what these dogs need, and it makes them amazing pets. Then you have to ask yourself, now the second phase of this podcast is, what are you going to do when you rescue the dog? What's your job? And your job really is, first of all, to give this dog as a neutral experience in transition as possible. I always say that, and people always want to butt heads with me on it. They always want to say, "Oh no, you got to give the dog love," and I just don't think it's the right thing. When I first bring a dog home to my house, and again, I don't care if it's a puppy or a rescue dog, it's neutrality. I want the dog to go into a crate and to see the house, see my dog, see me, see the environment without having to interact with it too much. So if the dog comes right away home and starts running around and chewing on carpeting and pisses on the rug, you're going to get mad at it and the dog is going to really fail. On the other hand, if the dog comes into your home, goes into a crate, has a really delicious bone to chew on or a Kong to chew on, and sees, oh, wow, there's another dog. Oh, I can't interact with him. Oh, there's carpeting. I'm not going to chew on it. There's this, there's that. And the dog just kind of settles into his environment in a chill, easy manner. That's really easy for the dog then to kind of understand by observation, which is how all animals learn. They learn by observing, and then they interact. They don't just jump in with both feet. That gives them a much better baseline of how they're going to fit into your lifestyle. And giving the dog that opportunity, I think, is huge. And it's the mistake that most people make. They bring the dog home willy-nilly. They drop the leash. They just let the dog go. There's Goofy up on the treadmill. You can see him up there. It's hysterical. He sits up there just because he wants to run on the treadmill. No treadmill today, Goofy. And just bringing the dog home willy-nilly and just kind of like letting him go and letting him have all the freedom that he, of course, never had when he was in the shelter it's a feel-good thing to do. It's what people do. They feel good. They think, oh, this is the greatest thing. I'm going to give the dog the best life ever. And they don't, right? They in fact, they fail the dog miserably because the dog is set up for failure, because more than likely the dog is going to make a mistake, and when he makes that mistake, he's going to get in trouble and he's going to lose freedom. And that's what happens. The dog goes from a shelter, a small kennel in a shelter, comes home, gets the yard, gets the house, and then messes up, and then gets put in a smaller part of the house and a smaller part of the house, and eventually the dog's in a little dog run, and they say, well, I can't let the dog out because the dog's going to chew up my furniture and piss on my rug and chew up my shoes and whatever. And then the dog loses all his freedom. And that's what's really sad. That's where we really fail these dogs. So bringing the dog home from the rescue or from the shelter. Now, again, if the dog was in a foster, it's a little differently. The situation is a little different because the dog has some experience. But I would still start the dog out in a crate. And a good foster will always crate train the dogs because they know the dog needs to be transferred. The dog needs to be put into another foster. The dog needs to be put at the vet. The dog's going to go into a new home. Starting the dog out in a crate is the number one best, safest, most compassionate way to transition a dog from rescue or from being a puppy into being a free dog and a really well-balanced dog. So in the initial phases of bringing the dog home with you really has to do with what I call decompression. So in other words, putting expectations on the dog, asking the dog to train, asking the dog to play, asking the dog to be petted by all your neighbors and all your friends and everybody in the family is too much for the dog. So the dog ends up completely overwhelmed, completely overloaded, and will inevitably fail. So the dog will end up in a situation where it's just going to be overloaded. In other words, they were living either in a shelter or in a rescue, and suddenly everybody gets to meet the dog. The dog has to meet people and has to greet people, has to be nice to people and doesn't know them. The dog gets overwhelmed. So, my position on it is take your time. Dog comes into your home, dog gets to hang out, dog gets to chill, dog gets to have a really nice, easy life with no stress, no pressure. The immediate people in the family, you, your wife, or your husband, or your kids, and whatever your family dynamic is, should meet the dog. But you shouldn't put too much pressure on the dogs. Kids shouldn't go hugging the dogs. If you have a current dog, they shouldn't be playing. You can take them out for a walk together. A slight, brief introduction, a sniff on the, from the nose to the tail is fine. Put the dog in a crate. Let them kind of like meet each other at leisure through a crate where they can kind of see there's no stress, no pressure, no really super high expectations of that. And then you'll take the stress off that way. A lot of good organizations, rescues and stuff, will ask you to bring your dog to meet the other dog, and they'll do a really social, little walk or something like that, which doesn't really give you an in-depth indication of what the dogs are going to get along like. It gives you a little bit of information, like they're not going to kill each other. That being said, I've heard of a lot of dogs that meet other dogs and they do fine on that initial walk, but then they get in the house and they start fighting, because it becomes more territorial. There becomes more spatial pressure, more areas for confusion, like borders and boundaries and resources, and that's where you're going to have your problem. So again, crating the dogs, allowing that to happen for a long time is not the worst thing you can do. In fact, I think it's the best thing you can do. So Socialization is really important for the dog. Get the dog socialized with your neighbors, your friends, your family, anybody who's going to come to the house, the workers, whoever you have around the house. And do that really casual and easy and make it a positive experience. Use food for a lot of these things. Have the dog in the crate, have a bone or a Kong or whatever in there. Let the dog kind of experience people coming in and out before they're made to interact with the person. It makes it a lot easier on the dog. Then start to get the dog out. You can take the dog to like a Home Depot, or you take it outside shopping, or you can take it to the park or things like that. Don't take your dogs to a dog park, by the way. Don't bring, especially a rescue dog, any dog, I shouldn't say especially a rescue dog, but don't take any dog to a dog park. Keep them on leash, keep them with you. Let them meet safe dogs, friendly dogs, and make sure your dog is safe and friendly before you introduce them to your friends with safe and friendly dogs, or else they won't be safe and friendly anymore at all. And then start your training. Start training the dog, because I think that's the single best way to form a cohesive bond with a dog is through training, is through communication, because training really is communication. It's not like you're training him for the Olympics. You're training him to listen to you. You're training them to understand what it is you want, and you're training them to know the importance of what you're asking them. So if you're asking them to sit and stay, they have to sit and stay. If you're asking them to come, they have to come. If you're telling them to leave it, they have to leave it. And those are the components of solid training. It doesn't have to do, a fancy obedience course or, an agility course or anything like that. It just has, when I say it, I mean he or she has to listen to you. And that's going to be, the bond between you and the dog, because it forms the relationship, because now the dog is able to communicate with you through listening to you, and you're able to communicate with your dog through giving the dog obedience commands. You explain, you teach, and you expect the dog to understand that. Okay, so now let's take some questions. Let's see where we are. Just remember, before I go anywhere else, don't let anybody pressure you into rescuing a dog, right? There should never be any guilt. If you're somewhere where there's a little pop-up adoption thing and people say, oh, if you don't adopt a dog, you're a terrible person. Or if you got your dog from a breeder, you're a terrible person. You know who the terrible person is? The person who's telling you that. Because nobody in their right mind would tell you that. And I see so much crap on the internet where, people shame people because they bought a dog. Now, if you get a dog from a puppy mill, even if if you didn't know, okay, I get it. But there's so much information out there now that buying a dog off Craigslist or off a puppy mill, off the internet, off the websites, especially if you listen to any of my podcast, any of my Ask Me Anything, I constantly talk about it. It's the dumbest thing. So if you did it before you had the information, okay, I get it, I understand, but don't do it, right? Listen to my podcast, listen to the information, do your research, and don't do it. But don't feel guilty because you bought a dog from a really solid breeder. You want to do sports with your dogs or activities or obedience or whatever with your dogs, and you got a really good dog from a breeder, and you're going to do, whatever, IGP, IPO, Schutzen, ring sport, AKC obedience, dock diving, nose work, anything. Yes, you can do those with a rescue dog too, but if you're going to take it to the next level, you might want to get a dog from a breeder as well. So no guilt about rescuing a dog. There's lots of dogs out there that need homes. There's lots of good breeders that are breeding good dogs. Just do me a favor. If you're going to get a dog, make a commitment. It's all about the commitment that you're going to be committed to this dog for life. That until that dog takes his last breath, the dog's going to be with you. You're not going to dump the dog in a shelter. You're not going to abandon the dog or abuse the dog or anything like that. That's important. If you can do that, hey, you're a good person. So like I like to do at the end of all my podcasts, I like to answer some questions, and I think that's really important for us to look at here. So if first one goes to Go Duke, and he says, how do I get my dog to stay in the yard off of a leash? I have a 10-month-old boxer and a 15-week-old Belgian Malinois. Once my boxer is out, he takes off and is out of sight in less than 20 seconds. So first of all, if you're leaving a 15-week-old Malinois with a 10-month-old boxer, first of all, I don't know why you'd have two dogs that close together. That's a bad idea, first of all. But they're not ready to be, a 16-week-old Malinois is 4 months old. It's not ready to be left alone with another dog, because you still should be engaging the dog, training the dog, crating the dog, and such. You should be monitoring your dog. I mean, God, I hope if you have a 10-month-old boxer and a 15-week-old Malinois that you have a fenced yard. And if you don't, and you're leaving your dogs off leash, bad idea. So my idea is don't leave them off leash, and that'll solve your problem. Stephen Rogers says, you use the term correction. Could you please be very specific? Please. Well, correction means making something that is wrong right. That means if I tell my dog to sit and he lies down and I pick him up by his collar and say, hey, no, sit, I've corrected the bad behavior. If I tell my dog leave it and he goes to lunge it and I pop him on a leash and I say, no, leave it, and I block him from getting the treat, toy, whatever it is, or the other dog, I've corrected the behavior. Correcting obviously means making something wrong right. And I know what you're kind of fishing for. You're fishing for me to say, I'm going to shock the dog, I'm going to hit the dog, do this. And it's not. Correcting, whatever it takes. You can withhold the treat. You can give a leash pop. You can give a correction on an e-collar. You can do anything. I mean, whatever it takes to correct a dog. Sometimes, you take the dog by the scruff of the neck and you give him a little scruff on the neck. Whatever it takes to give that dog the information they need to understand what you want. That's a correction. That's it. That's all there is. There's nothing compulsive. There's nothing negative. There's nothing abusive about corrections. Diamonds and dime bags. You've asked me questions before. I love your videos. Easily the best dog trainer on YouTube. Thank you. That's very nice. And that's not why I'm giving you the question, because you said I'm the best dog trainer on YouTube, but I appreciate it. I'm wondering if you have any advice for a dog that likes to play aggressively. My dog is very sweet, but with certain dogs, he really likes to wrestle. I don't mind this most of the time, but at the office where he joins me every day, it can cause a problem. He also completely ignores commands when wrestling, so I have to keep him leashed or he'll run off, which I feel makes the play more dangerous. I currently just try to hold his head in my hands to try and get him to calm down, but as soon as I let go, he will wrestle again and instigate with otherwise calm dogs. Any advice? You might consider putting a crate in your office so the dog, I don't know how big your dog is, but first of all, if I tell my dog knock it off, they got to knock it off. And like when Dwayne and Goofy are playing, what I just do is I put him on a place command. I tell him, hey, lie down. And that's it. When he lies down, like Goofy now, I just said that, and he was on my lap, and now he's lying down at my feet. And if they don't listen to that, you correct them. You grab them by the scruff of the neck and say, no, I said lie down. Or grab them by the collar and give them a correction. Give them a little tug and say, no, don't do that. Make sure your dog has obedience training before you introduce the distraction of another dog. Because if you don't, you're really barking up the wrong tree. You're going to really have a problem with the dog, and it's not going to be fun at all. Not at all. So make sure the dog knows obedience. A good place command, a good out command, a good leave it command are really important. That's what I would teach my dog. I don't like rough playing. I just don't like it with dogs, especially like what you said, he's running away. It's going to cause a big problem for you. Zach Nimmo says, Robert, I have a question regarding loose leash walking my male Dalmatian and my Cane Corso at the same time. I know where this is going. They are both trained to loose leash walk, but when I walk them together, they go back to pulling on a leash and trying to lead. I use choke collars as well as a 180-degree turn to try and get them to focus back on me, and I have no luck. Do you think it's possible for me to train them to loose leash walk at the same time? Thank you for the great content. Well, Goofy and I are both loose leash walk trained, but when they're together, they just act up. So, sometimes when you put 2 or 3 dogs together, they'll do that. Sometimes in a huge pack, it will die down. So you'll see people who do big pack walks, and they can keep all the dogs lined up because there's too many for them to actually get out of control. There's not one solid leader. It's like more of like they form into the pack mentality. With 2, they're kind of jockeying for position back and forth. So, it might be easier with an e-collar because 180-degree turns is impossible to do with 2 dogs because you have a 180-degree turn divided by 2 dogs, which means you'll never get one way or the other. I do think it's possible with maturity, and you have to do a lot of corrections and stuff like that, but it's going to take some time. So I'd walk them individually. That's just what I do. That's what I do with Goofy and Maya. I rarely walk them together. Marianne Green says, my dog is a rescue, bully breed, and must have been tormented in the crate. Everybody always says that. That's the first statement everybody says. When they rescue a dog, the dog had to have had a horrible life before you, but that's not always the case. So, because she goes berserk in the kennel. She's destroyed almost every crate I've had her in. I've had trainers work with us, and just no success. During agility, I've been able to get her on a soft-sided one just as long as she can see me while I walk the course. The minute I was out of sight for even just a short moment, she started tearing up the mesh. I've kind of given up any other tips. Well, with agility, you do need the dog to be in a crate, and you might start watch some of my crate training videos on my member section as well as on YouTube and Facebook, because it gives a lot of information that maybe you just need to leave the dog in there for a minute or two and wait for the dog to calm down and then take them out. Set a new habit. Maybe the dog is used to being in the crate too long and gets overwhelmed. Maybe there's nothing going on. Maybe leave something for the dog to do in the crate. Feed the dog in the crate. I say that a billion times. Give the dog a Kong or something to chew on in the crate. Put treats in the crate. Like, something Janet does is when the dog goes in the crate, she'll put a handful of kibble and just throw it into the crate. And the dog is so busy, like looking for the treats in the crate, that the dog doesn't have time to tear up the crate. Make sure the dog is good and hungry so that when you do it, that's something the dog is looking for the food. And again, it's just, you can just take a handful of kibble, and just drop it in the crate. And, they're going to be searching. And I wouldn't set, the bar so low as to put the dog into a soft-sided crate, because that's going to really cause them to destroy it. And the more they get into that, then that habit will fester. So really take some time, go slow with the dog in the crate. Watch my crate training videos, watch other crate training videos. I'm sure there's other good ones on YouTube as well. I don't know of any, but I just know of mine. But make sure you set the bar a little bit more attainable for your dog so that they can succeed. And having food in there, having something in there can make it a much more positive experience. Hope that helps. Hope this podcast works. I'm going to have to now edit it all together because I had to stop it 3 times because my video kept messing up. It's not one thing, it's another, I'm telling you. But I love bringing this podcast to you every week, growing on the charts. It's just climbing on the charts, which I love to see. More and more listens, downloads, whatever you call that. Listen, if you love this podcast, if you love what we're doing here, check out my website, robertcabral.com. Great membership section, lots of incredible content. You will not find it on social media. You'll find shorter versions, but the detailed, all the in-depth versions are on my membership section. Also, every week, members ask questions. They get them answered. It doesn't happen on social media. I'm 43 pages behind on questions and answers for Ask Me Anything. A lot of great content. But in the meantime, also great content on YouTube. Follow my Instagram. Follow me on Facebook. Great content. Great stuff. I think you'll love it. I think you'll enjoy it, and it'll make your life better for you and your dog. I want to thank you guys for joining me. If I don't, I actually will not talk to you before New Year's, and I'm going to wish you a very, very happy New Year and a joyous, prosperous 2020, that you may have all the success, happiness, health, and laughter with your dogs that you can possibly have. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.